Hi, everyone. I'm Tim Hunt. I'm a product manager at AWS. I'm on the Amazon Cognito team. Welcome to this session, Announcements for Mobile Developers. I'm going to talk to you about Amazon Cognito and a new feature for your user pools that we've added to the identity functionality. This was announced just today in the keynote, so you might have heard a little bit about it. We're going to go into a lot more depth. We've heard some pretty positive things when we've reviewed this with some developers so far, so I'm very happy to be able to share some more details with you today. Here's an overview of the topics. So we're going to start talking a lot about user identities in Cognito today, both what we can support today and actually what we support tomorrow. So quick clarification, the new functionality is available tomorrow. We'll tell you all about it. There's some things you can look at about it today, and then come back tomorrow and you can actually start using it. We're going to go into an example use case, and we'll go into showing you, specifically what you can do in an example like that. I'm very happy to have a partner, customer client, Asurion here with Ramesh principal architect, who's going to come up and tell you how they're using Cognito. We'll come back. I'll give you a broader overview of the new features and more of the specifics. I'll give you a demo that'll show you how quickly you can set up user pools in Cognito. And then we'll leave some time at the end for questions and answers. So user identities in Amazon Cognito. I'm going to start off telling you about Amazon Cognito up to now. And today, we have these three areas that we really group into two main distinct but related functionalities. On the left, we've got Amazon Cognito Identity. And Identity today provides federated identity management. So your users from your mobile or your web app can sign in and authenticate with Twitter or Google or your own authentication service or OpenID Connect. There's a lot of options there that we support for your users to authenticate. And then when they authenticate, Cognito gives you secure access to AWS resources by giving you credentials that you can use from your app. I'm going to go into some more detail about that in a few minutes. The other side is Cognito Sync. Cognito Sync is about synchronizing data across devices. So if you've got a user who's moving from one device to another, they can bring that data and have that experience be seamless as they move from one device to another. We're going to spend a lot of our time for the rest of this talk talking about the left-hand side, which is Cognito Identity. I suspect there are some of you here who don't know as much about Cognito Sync, and so I wanted to spend just one more slide on Cognito Sync to get you guys a little bit more background in that area of Cognito as well. So I mentioned that Sync enables you to store user data. It can be preference data. It can be state. It can be the progress that a user's made in your application. That can include things like their preferences settings. It can include their progress, maybe their accomplishments in a game or their state in a workflow. And then it allows you to easily, from your client app, synchronize that data to another device. A really nice way you could use this is if a user is moving from one device to another. It's kind of a drag if you're upgrading your phone and everything you have on your phone, all your apps are going to start off at square one again. So Cognito gives you a really nice way to avoid that for your users. Once they sign in on that new device, you can sync all of their settings, and instantly they can pick up where they left off. So that gives you that ability to sync. It also gives you the ability to work both online and offline. So you might have an app which is in a user's hand on an airplane, and you can still store and retrieve their preferences and their data and keep a local copy of that on the device. That's done seamlessly through the Cognito SDK. And then when that device is connected again, you can sync that data back up to the cloud and then be able to share it again across devices. So it's got that seamless offline and online capability. And you can do all this without any back end. So we've built the service. It's fully managed. You use an SDK, and you can configure it in our console. And that's all there is to it. You don't need to set up servers. You don't have to think about a back end. It's a simple service for you to get started with. So that's Amazon Cognito Sync. I'm going to get back to Cognito Identity. And I'm going to illustrate the user experience today, and then we're going to use this as a springboard to talk about the new launch. On the left-hand side at the top there, I've mentioned again authenticating with third-party providers. Again, Facebook, Google. And in the context of an app, and by the way, this could be a mobile app or this could be a web app. But in the context of an app, you can give that user the experience if you have them authenticate with sign in with Facebook, for example. Very common way. A lot of apps today like to give their users a way to authenticate. So we support signing in with these third-party identity providers. If you want to give the users today an experience where they have a username and a password to sign in directly with you, maybe you've built or you want to build your own identity provider, you can do that too, and Cognito supports that example as well. And there's that user experience in the middle where a user can sign in with a username and a password. And we also support guest access. So if a user is just starting and they don't want to make that commitment or take the time yet to sign in or authenticate, you can have them start as a guest. If they later make that step of signing in, you can seamlessly attach those two identities so they can continue with that same experience. And what Cognito is doing is it's taking those authenticated users, it's creating identity for them, and then for that identity, it's granting your app secure access to the resources either in AWS, maybe that could be an S3 bucket, it could be a DynamoDB table, or through Amazon API Gateway. You can provide access to any number, even your on-prem services, if you want to put those together. So that's what Amazon Identity, or Cognito Identity, does today. As we've used this service and we've seen developers use it and we've talked to developers about it, we find that rather commonly developers want to have this middle experience here in the app where users can sign in directly rather than using a third party like Facebook. It's good for the developer. You have actually more control. These are your own users now. These aren't Facebook's users. And there are some, depending on the app, there are some users who might not want to associate what they're doing with Facebook. Maybe they want to sign in directly. They'd rather do that. Or maybe they don't have a Facebook account, and they'd like to sign in directly with your app. So a lot of the developers want to provide this experience, but they don't necessarily want to do this part on the left, which is to build their own system. This is really, I think, a good example of a phrase we use often with cloud computing of undifferentiated heavy lifting. Signing in and authentication services are important, but they're not usually something that's going to make your app special or distinguish it from another. It's really what's special about your app is all the pieces that you build after you sign in. So it might not be something that you want to devote your time and attention to. It also takes a fair bit to get right, to build and maintain a directory. Security is certainly important here. You've got usernames, passwords, private information like phone numbers, email addresses. So you've got to think a lot about security. There are some overlooked pieces. It's not just keeping usernames and passwords at a database. There's a lot more to a user directory, like workflows for a forgot password or change your password. And if you're successful, and you hope to be, then you're going to have to build this to scale as your user base grows. So that's why we're introducing sign-up and sign-in capability with your user pools in Cognito. This gives you the three things outlined on the slide. It gives you easy user management, so your users can sign in and sign up directly with your web or your mobile app. It's based on a managed user directory, so this is simple to set up. We've run the service for you. It's secure, it's fully managed, and you can use it to create a user directory that scales to hundreds of millions of users. And it comes with enhanced security features, but it's built with security in mind, and on top of that, there are features like verifying phone numbers and multi-factor authentication for user sign-in. So I've given you a broad overview. I think the best way to show you really how you can use it is to give you a specific example. So we're going to bring up Ramesh Adabala to the stage. Again, principal architect for Asurion. Asurion has been a great partner as we've been developing this, and really happy to have Ramesh here. So
thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
He'll come back. So good afternoon. Again, as Tim introduced, I'm Ramesh Adabala. I'm the principal architect in enterprise architecture team at Asurion. We are based out of Nashville, Tennessee. And Asurion is the largest technology protection and support company on the globe. In plain English, we are the largest insurance provider for all your mobile devices. You may not have heard our name very publicly because we are a white-labeled company. But we work with all the major wireless carriers across the globe, and we provide all our products and services, such as cell phone insurance and premium support services, and all those through these major carriers. And within US, we work with AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, Cricket, all these carriers. And in Japan, we work with the Docomo. And in Australia, we work with the Telstra. We work with the Telstra. And in Europe, we work with the KPN and the British Telecom. And we are aggressively expanding in the Latin American continent, where we are partnered with America Mobile and Telcel and all these carriers. So we are a global company, and we are growing really fast. And right now, we have 270 million customers we provide device protection plans, the insurance plan. And as you can see, we are all over the globe. And the scale we are growing is actually we need to support 280 million customers, and we are adding more and more customers. And on top of our insurance plan, for a small fee, we provide premium service support for all our customers. So the premium service support, where we help all our customers with our knowledgeable live tech agents addressing all their technical issues with their devices, or if they have any questions on the devices. And also, we do provide proactive and reactive experience with their mobile devices to make their technology experience very delightful. That's where we focus, especially on the premier services side. As part of that premier services, we not only provide our live agent support, but also we provide multiple protection apps, the mobile apps that would be pre-installed with your AT&T phone or Verizon phone or Sprint phone, but these are all pre-installed on your device. That's what, but behind the scenes, we build those, but they're all white labeled. So those applications help our customers to really manage the device and manage the content and manage the data very securely to get these premier services. As part of this whole mobile application interaction, the security is very key aspect in developing as well as deploying and during runtime. And within the security, IAM, the customer-facing IAM, identity and access management, is the key portion or the heart of this whole security model. When we started this journey developing these mobile applications, we have developed a homegrown, like anybody else, with a simple table, with the user ID password, doing basic authentication for these customers after registration, and supporting that basic authentication at the runtime. That's how we started. But as we grew into millions of customers and millions of devices supporting these millions of mobile apps, we were looking for a right partner and a managed services where they can support and grow this service across the globe to support all our growing traffic. That's where we looked at quite a few SaaS-based, PaaS-based solutions in the B2C IAM space. Because if you look at the industry, there is a lot of maturity in the enterprise IAM, like where you manage your employee access, manage your identities using Active Directory or any LDAP directory. There is a lot of maturity in that space. Similarly, there is a lot of maturity in the partner IAM, like B2B IAM space, through SAML Federation and other federation protocols. But when it comes to customer-facing, where you have millions of customers, where you have to onboard these customers very securely and managing their life cycle throughout their presence with your business or services, it's very challenging task for any company who are dealing with millions of customers. So it's not an easy task to do it on your own and do that whole heavy lifting, especially at the global scale. That's where we looked at a lot of companies like B2C Azure AD from Microsoft, and there are a lot of SaaS-based providers like Okta and Gigya. These are all the products we did a very thorough evaluation where we wanted to outsource this whole B2C IAM and keep focus on the back-end APIs that are supporting our mobile apps, because that's our core competency. That's where we want to spend our time and money, but not on this front-end IAM piece. That's where we were looking for real, true partner. So when AWS announced Cognito early last year, we immediately jumped on it, because most of our backend APIs are being built on AWS using Lambda and Beanstalk sitting behind the AWS API gateway. And we are looking for some IAM provider who can work in conjunction with the gateway, AWS API gateway, and provide these user onboarding as well as user authentication functions. So when AWS announced Cognito, that's the one we looked at immediately after we looked at other products. But unfortunately, when in their initial release, they did not have support for managed user directory. Because as Tim pointed in the first slide, they had support for bring your own identity, like Facebook or Google or Twitter, because that's not a big use case for us right now, but we are really looking at, in the future, supporting third-party identities. But our biggest requirement right now is a managed directory where we could onboard these millions of identities and scale them globally. That's our immediate requirement in a managed way. So they did not have that support when they launched originally the first release of Cognito. But earlier last year, in the beginning of third quarter, they said, with the help of our account rep, Kurt, and our solution architect, Jason, who are here, they connected us with the product team, the AWS Cognito product team, where they gave us access to the private beta for the new managed directory of Cognito service. That's where we really got excited, because that will complete our entire solution for B2C IAM. So after looking at the managed directory of Cognito, and we put together the logical architecture diagram, how we want to do this end-to-end security when it comes to our mobile apps and protecting our sensitive backend APIs. And as you can see, we have exposed all our APIs through API Gateway through CloudFront and to our mobile devices as well as our browser-based apps. And all our APIs, they are sitting in the AWS ecosystem, either through in the Lambda or in the Beanstalk implementation. And that's where Cognito comes into picture, handling all the user onboarding, like we call it sign up or registration. And then once you register, you onboard the customer, and then at the runtime, how you do authentication, that is sign in, where Cognito provides the OpenID Connect token and their SDK internally. You don't have to do a lot of that heavy lifting, but their SDK takes care of exchanging those tokens and get the temporary AWS credentials. And those AWS credentials work very well with the API gateway. That is the beauty of this technology, is Cognito and AWS gateway, they work hand in hand, and gateway blindly trust the Cognito tokens, and your life to protect all your APIs would become easy. So that's what we did, the thorough evaluation of this end-to-end flow, and we really, excited, and it's a 100% match to the requirements what we have. And this is what we are going forward, actually, like implementing and rolling out in phases for all our customer-facing mobile apps. And going deep into our use case, so this is the sign-up use case, where they provide a workflow as part of the sign-up process. So if you have any custom requirements where you have to validate the customer before you onboard them, and if you have to validate their email or the phone that they are owning, just to make sure they are the one who are claiming the email or phone. And also, if you want to do a post confirmation, or if you want to do a special processing as part of the post confirmation, where we have some requirements. So as part of this workflow, you can extend those steps using a custom Lambda functions with whatever the business logic you want, or that meet your business needs. Here at Asurion, we have a special requirement. Before the sign up, we need to make sure these customers have right eligibility to get our apps and to get our services. Because we have a free customer base and paid customer base, we need to make sure we are providing the right experience when we are enabling the features within the mobile app. So that is the place where we do in the pre-sign up. In that box, that Lambda function is what doing all the checks against our on-prem APIs to make sure, yeah, they have the right eligibility and the right criteria before we go to the next step where we validate their email or phone number in the customized message step where we send the one-time password and they have to come back and enter that, and then that will complete their registration flow. And before we persist their data, whatever we gather as part of the registration, and we have a special requirement from our security to encrypt using our own keys, because that's how we do in AWS. Any SPI, PII, any sensitive data, we bring our own key. That's internal requirement, and that is mandated by our clients also. But we use Voltage. That's the tool we use. It's like a software-based HSM solution that we host on-prem, but we get the key before we encrypt all this data and hand it over to the Cognito directory. So this is our use case, but as you can see, we have a lot of custom workflow as part of the sign-up process, which is all being supported by AWS out of box and with little customization using their Lambda functions. That is really what we were looking when we are looking for a true partner in implementing our B2C IAM functions. And once you have the sign up, and the next step is now you have the customer in your system, and now it's time to sign in. And then as part of the sign in, again, as I said, they have good SDK support like Android or iOS and JavaScript support to build your browser-based or native applications to do the authentication, and they take care of getting all the AWS temporary credentials. And once you have the temporary credentials, now you have the whole access to the AWS APIs based on your IAM roles and IAM policies, because those temporary credentials are bringing a IAM role to the end user or to the device. And by virtue of that, you can limit what that device or that user could access on the back end. So, and also the refresh token and the renewing the token and the whole token lifecycle is all being handled by their SDK. So after this thorough evaluation of sign up and sign in, because that's the heavy lift that we wanted to outsource or offload to a managed partner. And here is my last slide where I listed out why we selected Cognito as our partner. Because whatever the requirement you have, because identity and access. In the identity side, they support all kinds of identity models, whether you want to bring your own identities with your own table or directory, or you want to outsource or offload to their managed directory, or you want to support your third-party identity providers like Facebook or Google. They do that, which we really wanted that. And then you can extend these workflows during sign up and sign in using all the Lambda functions, and they have good support for one-time password. And then as part of the identity function, they do all the heavy lifting of doing forgot password or change password functions. And very important for us is the global presence and the scale. As you can see, we have 40 million mobile app users, and dealing those 40 mobile user active authentications and active onboarding is not an easy task. So the scale that AWS bring is what we are really looking forward, and cost is another thing, the big factor for us, but AWS has done again and again, cutting down that cost and bringing very cost-effective solutions to the customers. So we never really worried about the cost, but the technology and the solution, that's where we found the complete match with all our requirements. And the support we got from the Tim and team during our private beta evaluation, it was really good. So with that, I will hand it over back to Tim.
Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you for that presentation. I hope you all enjoyed that. And thanks again for all your support in the journey. OK, I'm going to pick it up and go through some more of the features, give you a little bit of a broader overview. And Ramesh did a nice job of summarizing a lot of those. So we're going to start with the user side. So we have a comprehensive set of user scenarios. It starts with, of course, standard sign in and sign out as you would want for a user directory. We also have support for a more common situation that more and more apps are doing these days, which is allowing people to sign in with an email address or sign in with a phone number. So we have those built in as well. We have email and phone number verification, which is built in. That's done by sending a verification code, a 6-digit code to your email account or to your phone so that the user can confirm that is their device or their address. We have built-in workflows like forgot password or change password, so users can self-serve to take care of these things on their own. For things like forgot password, we also verify with a code sent to their phone or their email to make sure that, again, it's the right user. Users all have user profiles. I'll share you some of the standard attributes. You as a developer can customize this so you can keep whatever profile information you want for your users. And as we mentioned, one of the security features is multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication, if we haven't gone through this yet, many of you might be familiar with it, but as a user signs in with a username and a password or an email and a password, they can get sent a 6-digit code to their phone as another factor. So we're launching with SMS-based MFA, and we'll be developing other MFA approaches in the future. Now, if you think about it from the developer side or the administrator side, first I want to make the point that this is, as a developer, your user directory. And our goal is to provide for you whatever APIs and whatever support you need so that you own the users, you own the access to the users. And it starts with creating a user pool. A user pool is a construct that is your user directory that holds your users. You can create, configure, delete multiple user pools. And within a user pool, you can set up a lot of configurations, and that's really the rest of this slide. Within a user pool, you have your users. You can list them. You can search them. You can perform actions like confirm them, enable them, delete them, so you can manage your users. You can configure choices. Some of those were mentioned from the user scenario. So these are settings like whether or not you want to verify email addresses or phone numbers. It also allows you to customize the messages that get sent along with those codes. Again, this is your user directory. This is a white labeled service, so AWS is behind it, but from the user's perspective, this is yours. It's got your branding. You're able to customize all the messages. You can customize the AWS Lambda triggers. So Ramesh talked multiple times about the ability to customize, make advanced customizations. I'll go into that in a minute. You can set up password policies. You can decide if you want to have a more lenient set of requirements or more strict, depending on the needs and the sensitivity of your app and the information that might be secured behind it. And you can define those user attributes. So there's the standard ones. You can decide whether or not those are required. All of the attributes that are standard are always available for the users. But if you want to require any attribute for sign up, you can do that. And you can also add up to 25 custom attributes if you have some particular piece of information that you want to associate with all your users. I'll keep coming back to security in this new feature because that's really core and it's very important for a user directory. It's based on user or tokens based on the OpenID Connect and OAuth 2 specifications and standards. It uses SRP, or Secure Remote Password Protocol, during sign-in. If you're not familiar with SRP, that's a way that the client and our service can validate a password without ever having that password passed in plain text back to our back end. So it's secure end-to-end handling of your passwords. And again, that multi-factor authentication, an additional layer that you can make optional for your users or required if you so choose, so that you're adding that additional factor as a user signs in. A little more detail on the Lambda hooks. I've talked about a lot of the functionality, and we have a lot of built-in functionality, so that for many use cases, out-of-the-box functionality and features will serve what you need and meet your requirements. But if you have some advanced requirements or particular ways you need to handle a workflow, we've also given you an option through Lambda triggers that you can add your own business logic in these various parts in the process. So for example, in the pre-user sign-up, you have a Lambda function that will get called and have access to validate all of the data that comes, all the attributes that come with the user. You can look up a database, you can call it external service, you can do a validation against some acceptable values. Again, lots of flexibility. That's one example. There's a number of other ones there as well. There's one for custom message. I'll show you in the console a little bit how you can customize your messages very simply. But if you want to do an advanced customization, maybe a dynamic customization, you can do that as well. So there's a number there more. There's a lot of documentation on this so you can understand how you can make those advanced types of customizations. I'm going to go down one more layer in terms of how these pieces fit together. And in Cognito Identity now, we've got both the user pools, which is the user directory, and we've got the federated identities, or the functionality we had before today, which gives you the ability to get secure access to AWS. So I'm going to walk through a little bit of how these two pieces fit together. And they can start with a user there on their app. It could be a mobile app, it could be a web app. And they can sign in or authenticate through now Cognito with your user pool. As they authenticate, they'll get back some tokens returned to your app. So there'll be an access token, there'll be an ID token. Those will come back to your app. And your app now has an authenticated user, and it can exchange those tokens with Cognito for the federated identity feature, which is called an identity pool if you get down to the API level. So with Cognito identity pools, your client app passes in those authentication tokens. It gets back AWS scope credentials that are unique to that user. They're associated with an ID for that user, so that you can then access your AWS resources. Maybe it's S3 or maybe it's DynamoDB. That identity that's associated means that you can partition spaces within, say, a S3 bucket so that different users can only access their namespace within that bucket. You can also use Amazon API Gateway as a way to control access to any number of resources. They could be your own resources as well. OK, so with that, I'd like to switch over to the demo. Any moment now? Yep, I'm plugged in. They warned me not to unplug, and I did. So if this takes a minute, there we go. OK. So what I'm showing here is the console for Cognito. Now, this is going to be available tomorrow. The console is going to be where you can quickly set up a user pool. And what I'm showing here is the user pools page, and it's listing just the one pool that I've set up previously in my account. I'll come back to this pool because I want to show you how it works in a quick sample app. But first, I want to show you the process for setting up a new pool so I can walk you through the choices that you get, and you can see how it's pretty quick and easy to do. So I'm going to click over here to create a user pool. I'm going to start by giving this a name. So I'm just going to call this Tim Pool. And now at this point, if I'm an experienced user of Cognito and I know what my settings are, and in many cases I'm happy with the defaults, I could go down this path where I'll just get to review the settings and then back up to change anything I want to. Or if maybe I'm new, or maybe I know I have a lot of customization I want to do, I can go down this path where I'll get to see all the settings and step through each one to make my choices. The first one here is for attributes on the user. And what I have listed here are the, I think, 17, if I counted correctly, attributes that are the standard attributes from OpenID. Pardon? Well, yeah, I guess I can. How's that? Better? All right. Thanks for suggesting if you're having trouble reading. So these are the standard attributes, and all of these are available. What you can also do is you can check whether or not you want to require any of those. When you require one, that means that your app will need to provide a value when a user signs up. There's also an alias function here. The alias function is behind what I mentioned, the ability to have a user sign in with an email address or a phone number. So if I wanted to be able to allow my users to sign in with their email address, I could check the alias for that attribute. I can also add custom attributes. So maybe in this example, I want to add a number, which is I don't know, we'll just call it the code number that somehow I'm collecting for my app. I can do things like select the minimum value or the maximum value, and whether it's mutable. I could add others if I wanted to. Here are the options you get for password strength. Now again, you may choose that for some apps you want to make this more lenient. This may be a casual app or a casual gaming app where you would allow pretty easy passwords to be chosen. Or perhaps this is an app that's in front of some more sensitive information and you want to have more rigorous controls on your password. So you, again, you get to choose the settings you want for you and for your customers. Here's the verifications panel. Now in the verifications panel, I can choose if I want to enable multi-factor authentication. I can turn that on as optional, which means individual users may have it on or off, or I could require it. If I turn it on, I'll show you here how you then can customize the message. So this MFA code is going to be a 6-digit code that's going to be coming through SMS text messages, and you can customize that message, just making sure you include this placeholder that's going to get replaced with that code once the message gets sent. So I mentioned there's two ways. This is the easy way. It's a static template, very simple. You can set it up yourself right here through the console. You could also use that Lambda function that we showed you, the custom message function, if you wanted to do some more advanced customization. Similar to MFA is verification of email addresses and phone numbers. And you can, as well, you can choose whether or not you want to verify your email address or if you want to verify your phone numbers of your users. And if you've selected these options, you also get the ability to customize the email subject or the message that comes with your email. Again, you could also do this through the Lambda code. And similarly, you can do the same through your SMS for phone verification. So you have these built-in options to customize your messaging. We also, within a user pool, have the concept of an app. So an app might be an iOS app, for example, or an Android app. And each app gets an ID and an optional secret that you can include in your client app so that it has access to your user pool. So these are the apps that have the ability then to use your pool. I'm just going to say maybe this is my iOS app, just as a simple name here. So I can create that app. You can create multiple apps per pool. This last panel is the Lambda triggers panel. I mentioned this multiple times, but it's easy to review and then set up the different Lambda functions that you might want to choose. You would go first to the Lambda console, and there's a link here to create your functions. We've got some sample functions for each of these triggers as well. And then you could choose in the drop-down. Of course, I have just simple examples. But you could choose in the drop-down if you wanted to have any Lambda triggers that would customize different parts of the workflow. At that point, I'm done with my choices, and I have a review page, and I could create that pool and be off and running to build my app. I'm going to cancel out of that one and go back to this one that I've built before. So this is my demo user pool, and you can see some of the settings that I have here. I could go back and edit these as well if I wanted to. And once you have created a user pool and started to use it, you'll have this other panel here which lists your users. So I've used this a little bit for demos. I've got my 4 users in the pool. And I can also look at some of the information. So I can look at my John Doe user, see what his information is. I can also perform some actions on that user. So I could confirm the user, disable the user, enable MFA. So I can manage my users here. And if I go back, I'm going to now bring up an app. And this happens sometimes, so bear with me. The interface of this app will need to be restarted. Sorry, just a second. Let me restart the emulator. So I'm running this as a virtual phone here on my laptop. And what I'm going to be running there is I'll show you a sample app that was built in Android. Now this app and the sample code will all be available in GitHub. So Boy, that is a drag. Okay, seems we have it here. More like it. All right. All right, so sorry for that pause. We're back. So this is the sample app. Again, we've got an Android one. We've got an iOS one. Those will be available on GitHub, so you can download and you can see the code and get a jump start. I'm going to show you what happens if I use this sample app and I sign up as a new user. So let's say I'm going to be Tim H1234. I'm going to create a password. And I'll put in my given name here as well. And I'm going to put in just a placeholder email address. And then I'm going to enter a phone number. Now, many of us haven't met yet, so I'm going to avoid giving you my real phone number here. This is also going to be in YouTube, so I don't really want to publish this for the world. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a fictitious phone number here. But what I've done is in the code behind this, I've customized the code, so I've hard-coded my phone number. So while I put in a fictitious one here, the app is actually going to submit my real phone number once I tell it to sign up. And it's telling me I need to confirm my account. This is part of that automatic verification that we have built in. If I come back here to my user pool and I refresh the screen, I now have Tim H1234. While I was talking, my phone just buzzed, and I have a new text message here that gives me my code. And now I can go back to my app and enter my code, 307426. Click confirm. I was successful. And now I refresh the screen. There we go. Now Tim Hunt's confirmed. So that's the demo. It's really, again, as you saw, pretty quick and easy. I can set up a user pool in a few minutes. We've got a sample app, so you can see. We'll have questions at the end if you don't mind holding that question. I've got a sample app, so you can see how to build that same functionality into your app as well. And let me go back to the slides now, if we can. Okay, let's see, right, thank you. Okay, so this is what we have available for you today. I mentioned SDKs and sample apps, so we've got iOS, Android, and JavaScript today, and we've got more that we're working on. Those sample apps for iOS and Android are available. Tomorrow we'll have a blog that has a walkthrough for using those sample apps. The developer guide, the API references are all up as well. And again, the service itself and that console experience I showed you, those will be available tomorrow. I hope you'll get started. You can just go to aws.amazon.com/Cognito to learn more about Cognito and to get started with some of these new features. And that is it. Thank you. I'm going to be over here if there are any questions. But that ends the presentation, and thank you for your interest.